All right, welcome back to the Comics Multiverse. Today we have a returning guest, although it's been 3 years since he was last on, but he has currently is running a new Kickstarter. Dylan Andrews is joining me, and let's bring him in, and then we'll find out about his current Kickstarter. Let me just see. Hey,
Hello.
Dylan, how's it going?
Going great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's nice to talk with you on this sunny Sunday. Just sitting
Yeah,
here drawing and
it's
having fun and hanging out.
it's sunny in Maine because it's kind of cloudy here in New York.
Yeah, we had a really rough windstorm. We've been having a lot of these windstorms and these massive high tides, which has been
Hmm.
really difficult. There's a lot of the coastal flooding, and it's been pretty horrible this winter. Not a lot of snow, but a lot of flooding. So stop now. The sun's out. It's a beautiful sunny day and springing ahead. So definitely happy to be chatting with you and talking about comic books.
Oh, like I said, it was 3 years since we last chatted. I think that was for Skin Grafter.
Yeah, you were
Um,
talking. You'd sent me a link of a video of me. I'm like, oh, look at that young, vibrant, youthful comic book creator at that convention pre-pandemic. Oh, so much has changed.
uh,
That man now is so much older and wiser and grayer, and it's definitely been a long time. So it's good to chat with you again. I was saying to my wife, I was like, yeah, I asked, asked to be on a podcast or on a YouTube channel, and I said, "Hey, send me a link," and then he sent me a link of myself talking, and I'm like, "Oh, I guess I've done this already." So yeah, no, it's
yeah.
hopefully I didn't say anything too embarrassing in those old videos. I don't remember, so hopefully I won't say anything too embarrassing in this new video.
No, it's all good. And I think the first two I sent you are the ones when the Empire Comic Con was here in Albany, and uh, you were tabling there.
Yeah, I was wondering what that show was. I kind of just looked at it briefly. Yeah, so in Albany, there was a show, and I did it a few times. They don't do it anymore, and it was a really nice event. I love the people that put that show on. It's a little far from Southern Maine, but they always pulled in some really great creators. I know when I was there before, they had Joe Sinnott, who is the inker of Jack Kirby for years, who has passed away since, but getting to see him and chat with him briefly was a real treat. Um, a lot of great upstate New York creators. A lot of those guys
Mhm.
that were in New York City. Um, I remember seeing another bunch of those great artists were able to kind of be in that region. So you'd always pull in really talented pros.
Yeah, I think that show only lasted about 2 years, and then with the pandemic and everything else, it kind of just fizzled, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember I saw Dan Green. So Dan Green, famous inker who inked over Silvestri during his time on the X-Men and just incredibly influential, hugely talented. He came in with a sweatshirt pulled over his head and this giant tub, this Tupperware filled with original art and a guitar, an acoustic guitar. And he came in and he had a sign that they just printed out that day. Like, I guess he didn't know if he was going to be able to be there or they didn't have a sign ready for him. And it said, they printed out Dang, DANG, REEN, Dang Green. And so he
Hmm.
stuck those two together. He's like, I guess I'm Dang Green today. And flopped out this huge plastic tub filled with original art. And there was like Spider-Man 2099 pages and Wolverine pages with Silvestri. And I was just standing there for the whole show, just flipping through these originals, taking photos. He was such a nice guy. Also recently passed away. Just such a talented creator. And I wish now, if I had a time machine, I'd go back and just buy up as many of those pages as I could. I just couldn't do it at the time. And
Hmm.
original art has only gone up in value and price since then. And so I was like, I often think back and it's like, I was trying to make enough at that show to be able to just blow it on his artwork. And I was like, it just didn't work out,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And I often have some of those. I'm sure everybody's got those ones. It's like, oh, I didn't have it at the time. There's been ones too where I've been like Eric Larson pages, because it shows he'll have him sitting at his desk at his table, and I'm like, oh, I should have got that page. I can't do it. I want it. I can't do it. So
Yeah.
the
The
struggles
other
all out.
show that's the other show that um, takes place by one of the guys who owns a comic book store here in the area. He had Ramona Freight in here a couple times, and I was like, oh, I just don't have that money to. 1 second, I'll be right back.
Eh,
So, tell me about your history with comics as a reader and as a creator.
yeah, so I started reading comics when I was 5 years old. I think my first issue I remember vividly was Wolverine limited series, uh, drawn by Frank Miller. The green cover, issue number 4 of the limited series, the mini series, the green cover where he's got the crossbow. Um, that was such a hugely influential issue to me. I remember at the time drawing in the issue, like taking a red Sharpie marker, drawing every time Wolverine didn't have his claws out, I would draw his claws out. So I love that sort of stuff. So that's really my first memory of comic books. And then, of course, the Wolverine Kitty Pryde miniseries, that's another one I was into. And then, of course, the Claremont run of X-Men, that was hugely important and influential to me. I've just always been around comic books. There's never been a time I haven't had boxes of comic books. Um, of course, as I grew up and I got older, I got rid of them, and I wished I'd kept a lot of those early books. The Rob Liefeld New Mutants stuff, Mark Silvestri Wolverine stuff. I love the Jim Lee X-Men, but I'd say Eric Larson's Spider-Man, Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man, so all the original Image guys in the '90s. That was the stuff I was really massively into and influenced by. So all that '90s stuff really has been my favorite era. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of people my age are like, yeah, that was such an exciting time. And then I went backwards. So like I would read the classic X-Men reprints with like the Art Adams and the Mike Mignola covers, and seeing the John Byrne artwork and with the Terry Austin inks and the Dave Cockrum work, the X-Men work that he was doing, just seems so old fashioned to me. So the fact that the Cockrum Byrne X-Men pre Paul Smith and John Romita Jr. and Mark Silvestri, it just seems so outdated. So I'd read those classic X-Men reprints with the Art Adams covers and the Mike Mignola covers, and I'd be like, well, this is from the 20s. Like, this must be ancient. I can't imagine anybody drawing like John Byron, as I thought it was pronounced, and Dave Cockrum. I thought that they were just from like pre-World War II era comic books. Just because it seems so different than
Yeah.
like what Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson and Mark Silvestri were doing. I'm like, well, they must be from 100 years ago. Little did I know it was only like 10 years earlier.
Hmm.
So now I've gone back and I've started to appreciate that stuff more. I mean, they just did a Dave Cockrum artist edition. They just did a John Byrne artist edition. But really, my heart's always with that '90s stuff. Um, but as I've started to appreciate more of that cartoonier, thicker, heavier inking line, like pre
Hmm.
Art Adams, I think you look at that work and you go, oh, like the Joe Sinnott inks on Jack Kirby. You're like, oh, they're brush inking Tom Palmer, right? Like Tom Palmer
Hmm.
on Avengers, like he's or on Moon Knight, like he's inking like Ron Garney and Tom Palmer on Moon Knight as kind of right before Stephen Platt took over. And you see that there's just this different sensibility about brushstroke inking and getting it done rapidly, like not over noodling, really trying to have it be rendered quickly because they knew that the paper and the reproduction wasn't going to allow for a lot of those details and those micron lines that everybody started really getting into. And so now I appreciate that more, like that old school printing technique, the zipatone dots or the moire patterns or whatever they have. I love that stuff more now, but at the time I wanted glossy paper. I wanted computer coloring. I wanted it to feel really shiny and plastic. And I think now as I've matured as a creator, I'm like, oh, there's just this beauty about those thicker holding lines and those real limited color palettes and those Ben-Day dots that they all were kind of limited with and making red by adding magenta and yellow, right? Like now we have millions of colors of red. Like there's an unlimited number of digital colors I could use. But just going back and seeing just how beautiful those classic reprints are, That's kind of what inspired Lobster. This idea that how
Okay.
could you create something that was a modern sort of take, but trying to see those classic sensibilities for me, but infusing a lot of the dynamic layouts and designs of 90s comics because
Okay.
I dislike the rigid sort of grid. That's the thing that I could never get into with the Jack Kirby stuff is it's like, man, let the guy get out of a 9 panel grid or a 6 panel grid. It just doesn't. I mean, occasionally you'd have a double page spread, and you're like, why isn't this every page? You know,
Hmm.
Kirby. I think that was what really not so much. I love the wonky sort of made up anatomy. I love that. I love the weird sort of. I love the weird sort of characters that he created, and the worlds he created. But the thing I always found was really limiting was just that they didn't break panels. They didn't have interesting compositions or layouts. It just wasn't something they did. They thought it would
Hmm.
deter readability. And then with the 90s, they were like, no, we're going to do as insane as we can. Let's just try to push this as much as we can. And so I would love the idea of having classic coloring techniques, maybe sort of vintagey sort of inking techniques, but with modern sort of compositional layouts. And so I was like, well, what would that even look like? Um, so I started doing Lobstar like that, Lobstar and Kid Claw, my Kickstarter campaign, live right now on Kickstarter, which is kind of where I wanted to see what that would look like. And so I'm like, I don't see anybody doing that. I'm going to make that. So that's what I did.
Well, let's talk about the Lobstar. You've kind of talked about the inspirations for it. Kind of give us, like an overview or an elevator pitch for the series.
Yeah, so I call it the Down East duo, the heroes from Maine. I wanted to have these Maine-based characters because I'm from Maine. I love Maine, and I never really saw Maine being represented in comic books. Obviously, Stephen King, in horror writing, hugely influenced by Maine and that in the area. But I was like, oh, it'd be cool if there's like heroes from Maine because Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are so connected with New Hampshire and Southern Maine, but they take place in New York City. And I was like, well, that's,
Hmm.
because it's a Frank Miller Daredevil homage. And so I was like, well, it'd be cool if there was like Maine based. I know even like Sean Murphy, when he did his White Knight Batman series, he would shoot reference in Southern Maine and Portland. So you'd see Gotham looked like Maine. And I was like, well,
Hmm.
that's still not a Maine comic. And I'm like, I'm sure there have been comics based in Maine. I can't. I mean, I don't know of any. Nothing jumped to mind. So I was like, well, should try that. And then I was like, well, if it's a Maine-based hero, like, well, he'd be like lobster themed because that's kind of what we're known for. And then you could do a lot of sort of puns on that and have it be kind of silly and goofy. And I was like, well, if it's kind of silly and goofy, maybe it's more for younger readers, right? Maybe if it is that 80s genre style, maybe it doesn't have the overly violent graphic nature of the 90s comics. Maybe it had more of that simplistic childish wit and charm of older vintage comics. If I'm going to use vintage coloring techniques and try to use more vintage inking techniques, maybe that have a younger reader feel. And so
Hmm.
that was what I started doing. And of course, I love Batman the Animated Series, that cartoon series, and Superman Adventures. So like that Bruce Timverse stuff. I was like, oh, that I love the feel of that. And so I was like, what if I had the character kind of have sort of the color scheme of like a Superman, and then, but like the abilities of a Batman the Animated Series, where clearly he's got heightened, he can jump from building to building, not, swing on a grappling line. That's not something a normal person could do, but he's not
Hmm.
given any sort of extra superhuman meta powers. It would just be kind of limited to technology and gadgets. And so that was another thing I tried to pull in. You can see with all this stuff, it's just about pulling in influences, seeing stuff that I love, trying to make stuff I hope will connect with people, but really just making stuff I want. So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
a main based hero, looks like Superman or like Space Ghost, but has Batman abilities. And even like I look at him now and I'm like, oh, if he wasn't red, white, and blue, um, if they had him in like Batman colors, like that would look too much like Batman, too much like Space Ghost. If he looked more like Superman, like wouldn't hint at the sort of brawler vigilante techniques, sort of ground level hero stuff I want him to have. And then I was like, well, he's got to have a sidekick. And so, because, you know, the Batman and Robin influence. And for young readers, that was always the reason why they brought in the young sidekick, was it's like, well, that will connect with a younger reader. So I have the
Hmm.
sidekick. Um, and yeah, it's just kind of a father-son hero story, which I didn't see a lot of. So I was like, oh, maybe people will dig it. So, but I think it's different than stuff I normally do. So the reason why I'm on Kickstarter right now, Lobster and Kick on Kickstarter right now. We've hit goal. Moving on to stretch goals. The reason why I put it up on Kickstarter was like, I don't know if anybody will think this is interesting at all. It's
Hmm.
different than what I normally do, which is more like horror hero. Um, yeah, like Warhood
Yeah.
is something I've done for years, and that sort of archive universe world that I've built. And I was like, well, this is definitely a departure from that. The coloring looks different. It's usually I'm just doing a lot of black and white stuff. Um, and it's a shorter comic. It's an 8-page comic just because I wanted it to be something I could keep the goal down on and get done rapidly. So I knew that in order to have a lower goal, it would require the printing and the shipping to cost less. That's really what the goal
Right.
is for, is to pay for the printing and shipping. And so I reduced the page count in order to do that. Hopefully that we could unlock a second issue, which is also going to be an 8-pager, which so yeah, if people like it and they dig it, I can keep doing it. If not, I'll just keep doing it anyway. That's always been how
Yeah.
I roll. Even probably back when you interviewed me in 2017, 2018, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to keep doing this. So hopefully people dig it and come along for the ride. But regardless, this is what I'm doing. You got
Well,
any
if you're
thoughts?
since you're working on stretch goals, and people obviously are digging, this, so far.
Yeah, we've hit goal. And the thing is with any of these sort of campaigns is you hope for the best, just kind of put it out into the universe, and whatever happens, happens. Like I've always funded, like I've always hit goal, but you never know. And there's a lot of factors to all this, and I don't pretend to be an expert on anything. Um, but I know that there are so many really talented creators doing campaigns right now,
Yeah.
and I think that's just kind of the way the industry is, where you'll have, I mean, Top Cow Darkness hardcover volume 3, and then Image Comics doing, I think, Extremity, I think it's called, with Daniel Warren
Yeah.
Johnson. That just crossed like a 500,000 almost. So you even have established publishers doing Kickstarters. So it's not like Kickstarter is just for indie creators that are just producing, 8-page young reader fun adventure books. Like, no, you have oversized hardcover artist edition massive campaigns occurring alongside. And I think it's awesome that there's so many talented creators doing Kickstarter campaigns. Um, but it is definitely challenging. I mean, it's like if
Mm.
someone was to go on Kickstarter and they have hundreds and hundreds of projects to choose from, it's like, yeah, I mean, Image Comics is a really big name and they're going to be able to produce a really high quality product, but I feel like that's not what I'm doing. Like I'm trying to do these little short stories and just kind of pay for the printing and the shipping. So
Right.
definitely a different business model. Um, yeah, but I mean, hey, I don't know. What do I know? Hopefully there's enough readers out there that love everything and they happen upon my stuff when they see one of these giant campaigns that are also occurring.
Now, as we're talking, you're obviously, drawing and stuff. Do you always work with on paper, or do you do some of your stuff digitally, or
Yeah,
did
so
you do
I
the book digitally, or?
yeah, so I do draw traditionally. So this is a lobster drawing I did with markers, and I was just messing around again with anything. I'm just trying to have fun and learn and experiment, and so that's done with gray markers. And this is another one I'll show you. I have it over on the side. This one's in a frame, so it might be kind of shiny. But this is another lobster drawing I did with markers. These are all up on my YouTube channel, so go to dylandistraction.com. You'll see the process for these. I think in this day and age of AI generated work,
Right.
yeah, in this day and age of that, I think it's vitally important that even if you work digitally, you still put something down on paper,
Hmm.
because people won't know whether or not it's real or not, because it's indistinguishable at this point. So uh, I do. all of Lobstar interior pages digitally on Procreate on an iPad. I love working digitally. It'll, it just, I can work anywhere. I can work on the couch. I can, work in the car. It really enables me to have some flexibility. But I realize that if you're only working digital, then people are going to go, is that real? Did you make that? I don't know. But if you have a YouTube channel like I do, DylanDistraction.com, where I show a lot of pencil, pen, paper process work, then I can go, just look, I have hundreds of
Yeah.
videos of me drawing on paper. Like, you can't, this is real as it gets. And so I think there's a real benefit to that. But I love digital. I get why people use it. It's just is so convenient, and you can get some really cool lines. And I think it helps too with that sort of Bruce Timm minimalist inking style and technique, which I'm trying to do more of, because it really kind of enables you to be kind of liberated. Like, if you've ever tried to ink anything traditionally with a brush, it can be a bit daunting, and there's not a lot of room for error. But when you're working digitally, it really kind of frees up any sort of stress about that. You can just kind of have fun and let it flow, and realize that you can always just work over everything forever. So
Okay. So, what are you offering for those who may want to back the campaign?
yeah, so Lobstar and Kid Claw right now on Kickstarter. Please check it out. I don't know where the links are. Go to dylanandrewsart.com if you want to see the link. Um, and DylanDistraction.com. That's my YouTube channel. I got a bunch of stuff up there showing process and work and behind the scenes. So we have the digital version, the digital edition. If you don't like tangible objects, but I would suggest everybody get the book. Like, it's a physical book, printed, comic book size, comic book format, saddle stitch, 8 pages, so it's short. So if you have a young reader and you want to read it to them, that's often the thing where it's like, oh man, I don't want to read all this book to this young reader. Their attention span's not going to hold for that long. But I thought, well, 8 pages, that enables me to keep the printing and the shipping costs down, and a young reader could quickly get through an 8-page story. So that's available, the physical copy. You could also get my Ink It Up 2023 sketchbook edition, which has a bunch of my original characters: Warhood, Cringe, Cyst, Selenic. Boy, who else is in there? I got so many characters. I got an entire sketchbook filled with original characters. That's all my like archive universe characters. I love all those characters engraved. Um, I've been making comics now for years, so I got a lot of art and a lot of characters. I put them in a sketchbook edition. That's oversized, so you can get the Lobstar and Kid Claw issue 1. You can get it with the Ink It Up sketchbook edition. You can get add-ons. So there are add-ons, and in the campaign, the add-ons are, you can get an 11 by 17 signed Batman print. So I got it in color with the characters in the background. This is definitely my Bruce Timm sort of bad guy rogues gallery. You can get it in hot pink, and then you can get it black and white. So you can add these on for an additional cost, and all of the money for the campaign, anything you back, it just helps me to make more comics. The stretch goals are the Spawnuary sketchbook, which
Mhm.
is another 8-page comic book showcasing all of my Spawn covers. So in January, they did Spawnuary, where people could like do submissions and draw Spawn covers. And I did a bunch, and I think they came out great. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to put these in a book and collect them. I can't sell it, but I can give it away in a campaign. So those are all available. That's a stretch goal that is available. That would go out to all physical reward backers if we unlock it. And then the other stretch goal, the mega stretch goal, is if we unlock Lobstar and Kid Claw issue 2. I'd really love to do that. That would again enable me to print and ship that, so people would receive their standard pledge, but also these additional bonus stretch items like the Spawnuary sketchbook and Lobstar and Kid Claw issue 2. So hopefully people go check it out, go to Kickstarter, pledge as much as you can, help us hit stretch goals, and thank you everyone so much that has already pledged and backed. It means the world to me. I'm thrilled to make comics. I'm gonna keep making comics, and but I love being able to share it with people and send it out into the universe. So
Cool. So we want to play 5 questions.
yeah, let's do it. Five. Are they hard questions? I'm. I don't
No,
know. All good.
I don't think there's any right or wrong answers. I mean,
Oh, those are the best kind of questions. Multiple choice, B and C. I pick C every time.
all right. The first question: if given the chance by one of the major publishers, what B or C list character would you love to work on?
Oh boy, Creeper. That just popped into my mind. Remember that Ditko character, the Creeper?
Hmm.
That one just kind of popped into my mind as a random DC character that I haven't seen much of lately. So I think you could kind of do some fun stuff uh, with him. B or C. Geez, who would even be further down the line than that? I remember reading there was a Keith Giffen, Howard Porter. It was called Justice League 3000,
Hmm.
and that was a wild, wonky, weird version of Justice League, and it takes place in the future where they're all like reincarnated, but they don't really act like themselves. Like in during the reincarnation, they were it caused them to be kind of have like glitches essentially,
Hmm.
and so. But I love those Justice League 3000 characters, and they're not utilized. So it's like a weird version of Batman, a weird version of Superman. Um, I've always loved that series. I would think that that would be a fun one to kind of to touch back on. Um, as far as like a Marvel B and C list characters, I'm just looking at my bookcase here. Let's see. I don't know. Is Cable a B list character?
Eh,
I would love to do it
sure,
for
sure.
Marvel. I'd love to do a Cable because I love Rob Liefeld. I think that that character is so much fun. Um, so yeah, I think those are my answers. Or maybe a bad guy book. Like I like how they recently did those One Bad Day books where they
Hmm.
featured like a villain.
Hmm.
So I mean, like Bane, they did the Bane One Bad Day, and it's like, oh, it'd be cool to see what that character is up to. I know they
Hmm.
recently did a mini series, but it just seems so out of continuity and just seems so different than him because that's one of those characters like he started off so Bane started off as the physical physically more dominant than Batman. And so he was just this horrifying character when I was growing up. It was like, oh, Bane is the evilest thing I've ever seen. He like they had that him training in Santa Prisca, and you're like, oh, he's just a beast. And then he became like this watered down sort of is he the big bad? Like, is he as terrible as? And then he was killed, and now he was like Task Force Z. Ooh, Red Hood. That'd be another character I'd love to do. Red Hood, Deathstroke. I love Deathstroke. I'm more of a DC character kind of guy, I think.
Okay,
I mean, I'm sure I could come up with more Marvel guys, but I think probably just more DC guys.
sure. Okay, question number two.
All right.
Well, who, and they can be either artists or writers, would be on your Mount Rushmore of creators?
How many people are on Mount Rushmore? Four or five?
Four, I think.
Four. All right.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Top four creators of all time. All right. So favorite artist, I'd say, is Mark Silvestri, just because of how influential he was and how just groundbreaking as an illustrator I believe he was and is. If you look at that Deadly Duo book he just did, the Batman book, that was,
Hmm.
I mean, it's a masterpiece. That should be an artist edition. People should study that in school. I love Eric Larson just because of the fact that he's created Savage Dragon for as long as he has. So the fact that he started in '92 and he's at almost 300 issues now is just profoundly important, I think. The fact that you have a single voice writer, artist, penciler, inker, creator, that's just, I mean, as far as it's phenomenal. I
Hmm.
love Todd McFarlane because of his business acumen. I love his artwork. Obviously, I'm a fan of him and his work. Um, but, you know, I don't know if I'd put him up there as far as artist. I'd put him up there for business and being a creative professional, being one of the most well known and recognizable people in the industry. And then I put Rob Liefeld up there because he's just such a great self promoter. He's so great at marketing and promotion and putting his fingers into the pies and just being able
Hmm.
to create magic and interest and activity and energy where often there was none. I think just as I love his work and his art also, and he's actually still doing interiors. I think it's profound. So I would
Hmm.
put him up there because of that. So you'll see those are all kind of image guys, and that's because that's the time I grew up reading. That was the characters, the artists and creators that are most influential to me. But I think you could,
Sure.
I think hearing me make a case for them, you'd go, oh, I see why. I mean, that
Hmm.
I I I get it. And so I could do a whole nother, other Mount Rushmore if I wasn't able to use those four. But like, you go like, oh, Frank Miller, obviously,
Hmm.
Mike Mignola because of how he's changed the game. Matt Wagner, I loved Matt Wagner's work. Um, uh, who else can I talk to? I love current creators. I love Declan Shalvey. I think his work is great. I
Hmm.
love Michel Fife. His work is just bonkers, phenomenal. But those guys are younger, so I wouldn't put them on. I wouldn't put him on a
Yeah.
pedestal just yet. But Greg Capullo, just because of the body of work he's created, and how influential he is. So yeah, I got a lot.
Okay. Question number three: Star Wars or Star Trek?
Neither. I don't care for either.
Okay. Okay. Fair
I'll
enough.
answer that. So Star Trek: The Next Generation, I didn't get it. I was like, I don't get this at all. Um, what are like, that doesn't connect with me. And then of course the classic Star Treks with William Shatner would always come on, and I'd change the channel. It was like MASH. I'm like, if MASH comes on or Star Trek comes on, I'm like, nope, and I just turn the TV off and go read comics or draw. And then Star Wars, I remember being in the theater as a little kid. I think it was Return of the Jedi, and I just fell asleep because I was a little kid. And I remember being in the trash compactor, and I remember Yoda, and it was just horrifying to me. I'm like, this is terrifying.
Yeah.
But I was a child, so I didn't really understand it. So I was too young for it when it first came out. And then when the fifth one, the whatever they call those, the Anakin Skywalker
The
one
prequels.
came out. Yeah, the prequels. I was too old. So those came out, and I was like, well, now I'm too old. I'm not a kid. These are for kids. These are kids' movies.
Hmm.
I don't give a crap about these. So I watched them, but it just didn't interest me. Um, and so, yeah, no, neither of those franchises are something I'm terribly invested in. And I didn't ever catch on or connect with the comic books of those series either. But I thought The Mandalorian was entertaining. I watched some of that. And I thought Darth Maul looked cool. So I watched some of that. But yeah, if I had to, I'd say Star Wars, but it
Okay.
doesn't really interest
Eh,
me.
fair enough.
Yeah,
All right. I think we're on question four.
yeah.
Um, uh, you can you're stuck on a desert island, but you can only have three. And I will allow omnibuses. I will allow runs of comics.
Boy, only three?
Only three.
Do you know what the room I'm currently sitting in has a lot more than three? Jeez.
Well,
Okay.
I think the
Boy.
last time we chatted, you showed me your room, and I've seen so I'm sure it's only grown since then.
Yeah, it looks like the inside of a crazy person's brain. So, if you wonder what it's like to have a lifetime of loving and appreciating publishing, artwork, comic books. I create my own work. I collect other people's work. I use everything for reference and inspiration. I teach, so I'm also a teacher, so I use it for educational purposes. I have a vast array of bookshelves and work. That is me just stalling to try to figure out which books I'll grab. So, Savage Dragon Archives, which are like the black and white phone book editions, I got three of them within reach right there. I'd count that as one.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's so Savage Dragon Archives edition by Eric Larson. Love his work. Huge fan of Eric Larson, Savage Dragon. Within reaching distance, I got King Size Kirby. That's a really fun big book. And if I'm on a desert island, I could like use it as like a roof on a if I had to, because it's a very large, sturdy book, bigger than an artist edition and heavy. So a lot of pages in that. And if my vision starts to go, I can still read it because it's quite big. Um, Also within reach, I got Black Hammer, Jeff Lemire's Black Hammer, which is dope. I got some Matt Wagner, Grendel stuff. They recently released those in larger format. I got Black Science by Rick Remender, which I think is really good. Michelle Fife's Copra, which is phenomenal. I got some Omnis next to me too. I got Death Metal, that one just came out, looks awesome. And of course I have Dark Knight's Metal, the prequel to that. Oh boy, I don't know. That's a kind of a good list, right?
Yeah,
I got a
that's a
lot.
great list.
Oh, Frank Miller, Sin City, all of those volumes. Those just recently released
Uh-huh.
with slipcases. Those are beautiful books. I just like really like beautifully printed books. Even if I'm not reading them, I just like to have them because I'm such a fan of printing and publishing. So even just seeing like these hardcovers and slipcases and different paper qualities, and I'm hoping at one point I'm able to pull off an oversized hardcover with some of my characters. It's just so cost prohibitive as an independent creator. It's like I don't know if it would ever be something that I could justify, but it would be cool. I love oversized hardcovers and omnis, and maybe one day, hey, back Lobster and Kid Claw on Kickstarter right now, and help push us towards that oversized hardcover omnibus artist edition. It's just another 3,000 backers away. I'm sure we can hit it no problem.
And the last question, then I'll give you a chance for one more pitch of the book and the campaign.
Sure.
How have you how have you grown as an artist? Uh, with I mean, you've kind of talked about it with the Lobstar work. How do you feel you've grown as an artist, as a writer, um, as a creator?
Yeah, I think with any of this stuff, like I love the consistency of artists that have been able to stick to a style forever and are just really well known for that. Um, but I'm also a fan when an artist is able to create something unique and original and redefine themselves. So
Mhm.
I think like a Mike Mignola who has had or Mignola who's had such a long career and really created a style so unique and distinctly his own that if anybody tries to scrape it, they would obviously clearly be ripping off someone who's just created his own verbal language at this point. Um, so I'd say for me, using different tools, trying different brushes, trying markers, right, which is not something I'm terribly comfortable or familiar with, or like with these, trying this sort of moire zipatone pattern of coloring, right? This Ben-Aid
Mhm.
dot sort of technique. That's it's vintage and it's old school, but it's not something I'd ever done. So even just trying it, I think helps you to improve and push and learn. And so, and just with my composition and storytelling, um, it's just a matter of repetition. And that's the thing
Mhm.
is the more hours you can put in, the more pages you can get under your belt, the more you're able to stay motivated and excited and inspired. And if you keep looking at stuff that you love and keep trying to have influences that you love, you're just going to grow and progress because it's fun to print comics and ship comics, but really it's the process. It's the making of the thing that I love. And so having a completed finished comic is great. I love doing it, but I'm always on to the next thing. And I've done
Mhm.
13 Kickstarter campaigns at this point and done a lot of conventions pre-pandemic, not as many after, but um, I'm hoping that if anybody is inspired or excited to create comics, that anybody can, don't lose that joy, don't lose that hope, don't lose that optimism, don't become jaded or angry or bent out of shape. Really try to stay passionate and appreciative and just keep making stuff. Nobody can stop you from making comics. If you just want to make comics and tell stories, there's never been a better time to produce your work and get it out into the world.
All right. Well, as we wrap up here, how about you give us one more pitch for the campaign and tell us tell us again where people can follow you and your work.
Yeah, Lobster and Kid Claw. Right now on Kickstarter, we've hit goal. We're moving on to stretch goals. Thank you so much to everybody that's backed it. Lobstar and Kid Claw on Kickstarter right now. If you go to DylanAndrewsArt.com, the link is right there. Also on all my social media, you can find it at DylanAndrewsArt.com. My YouTube channel, DylanDistraction.com, where I just post me drawing and talking. That's available. Please subscribe, like, thumbs up, share, comment, all those things. Yeah, I'm psyched to have Lobster and Kid Claw ready to go. I just need your help to hit the stretch goals, get this thing printed and shipped out to you. So you're not going to be waiting around forever. I've always fulfilled all of my campaigns. So go right now, Lobstar and Kid Claw on Kickstarter. Go to dylanandrewsart.com. And thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure chatting with you. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for coming, making the time to chat. It was great to catch up with you.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll see you at a convention at some point.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I don't know if you're planning on doing doing New York again, but
New York is a big commitment. It is not
yeah,
an easy show to do, and at some point I'm hoping to get back to those big shows, but we shall see. If they want to have
yeah,
me, that's kind of what it depends on.
yeah.
If they want to have me, I'm able to go to any show that wants to have me.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll cross paths in real life soon. So
Yeah,
stay safe. Hopefully, the weather up in Maine will kind of get under control. I mean, we go up there for vacation along the coast, and we're like, watching some of the footage, and it's just devastating.
yeah, we're a sturdy state, so we're tough. We'll bounce back. We always do.
All right. Well, I'll let you get back to whatever you were doing, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much, man. Catch you later. Thanks, bye.